Parenting is tough, even under the best of situations and conditions. It gets even tougher if there are problems going on between mom and dad. We want to talk about 3 parenting essentials that apply to every parent, no matter what your situation. But we're going to be talking a lot about in the context of what if mom and dad really are having some serious problems? How does it work in those situations? You see, we at Marriage Helper, and by the way, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Joe Bean with Marriage Helper, and we do many videos about relationships. And if you want to be on the list to know when new ones come out, just click that subscribe down below. But we have this marriage workshop we do that is 3 intensive days. And sometimes people come to the workshop not because they want to make the marriage work. They actually really want out. But they have been told, hey, if we go to this workshop, even though they talk about it in the context of marriage, we're going to learn some really important things about parenting. And we really need to know that because we may wind up split up. And indeed, it's true. Now, understand it is a marriage workshop. But in that workshop, every principle we talk about when it comes to relationships applies directly back to parenting. And if you were to come, for example, to that workshop, you'd get that. I have with me today Erin Hood, who is one of our client representatives here at Marriage Helper.
Hi.
Thanks for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, not only does she work with us here at Marriage Helper, but you and your husband actually went through our 3-day workshop for marriages.
We did.
But in that workshop, which you did to make your marriage better because you're having some troubles, you learned some really important things about parenting. Now, let me give you a little bit of background about Erin so you'll understand. When we met Erin, she was in her second marriage. The first marriage was over. And when she went into the second marriage, she went in with children from the first marriage, and that became some of the obstacle. Is that right?
Yes.
And what kind of problems, just very quickly and generally?
Just some little parenting, maybe not seeing eye to eye with just different ways that I wanted to parent. And I was parenting more out of fear, out of protection, out of not healthy parenting. And my husband saw that. Mm-hmm. He saw that. And, all the principles that we're going to talk about in just a second were huge. It changed my life, changed the way I parented, and really showed me that my husband was right. He was right.
Don't be thinking, oh my goodness, I can't ever go to your workshop because I'll find out my husband was right. But the thing is that when you came for your marriage,
yes,
but in the workshop, learned a lot about how to be a better parent.
Yes.
And sometimes when people come, like I have no intention, I have no desire to save my marriage, but I'll come to your workshop because they can help me parent, our response to that would be?
Absolutely come. The biggest breakdown was communication.
Okay. So let's talk about the 3 things, if I may. We'll go into that. Because while we could have Erin talk about all kinds of things happening in our workshop and how it helped her when it came to parenting, we're going to talk about 3. And I asked her to choose the 3 that had the most impact on you and the way you interacted with your children, which also were great marriage principles with you and Dale, your husband. So stay with me here. A lot of really good principles, but 3 essentials we talked about. And the first one had to do with the concept we talk about called
the wall.
The wall. Okay, now give me just 10 more seconds, if I may, to explain the wall, and then I want to ask you questions about that. When we talk about the wall in the workshop, and we spend about an hour, so don't think we can explain it all here, but it has to do with the fact that when people fear that you're going to reject them, they tend to build this imaginary wall and hide the real selves behind it. It's because I think maybe you won't accept what I think, what I feel, what I believe, what I do. And so I'll pretend to be a person that you can accept, but I really want you to love me as I am. And when we talk about that, and again, we talk about it in much more detail in the workshop. When we talk about that, we talk about the fact then if we can get people to take bricks off the wall, in other words, show us who they really are, right, then they feel more loved. Now, how did that apply to you in parenting?
Well, for me, I recognized that not only was I doing some of those things that you talk about in the wall, like putting bricks up and things like that, because I didn't feel understood in the marriage because of where I had come from, the protection that I was trying to give, to my children. I also realized that my kids were putting bricks up, and
in other words, hiding their real selves.
They were hiding their real
self, emotions.
Exactly, because there's a lot of fear that kids feel when their parents fuss, fight, argue, split up, all of that stuff. And I was negligent, not on purpose, but because I had the lack of knowledge of what I was seeing, of what they were doing. And so when I went through the workshop, I realized that if I didn't start talking to my children differently and learning how to kind of break that wall down that they had created, that they were probably going to end up in relationships putting walls up, or,
Where they would hide their
where they
real
would
selves.
hide who they really were, and just really creating a safe place for them. And it's so important for both parents to do that.
Right. Now, in a situation like yours, and again, we met after you were in the second marriage.
Yes.
In a situation like yours, that's actually three people involved here. Your former husband, who is still a biological father, the man you're now married to, and you, that while you can't control what either of those two guys do,
Right.
you certainly hope to. And of course, Dale being in the workshop with you got to
It
learn
helped,
these principles.
yes.
It's like, okay, our kids probably have some emotions they're afraid to share right now because they're afraid that we'll reject them. They have some things they think, some things they believe. And so one of the principles you got was, okay, I'm going to learn how to allow them to be
Who they are. Talk to me. Be there. And two, just maybe sometimes I need to step back and pay attention to them a little bit more than being consumed in, my hurt, my pain, and recognize.
And that kind of leads us to the second thing you said. Now, you picked three out of the many things we talked about in the workshop. And the second one's what's called an attachment style. Just so you understand, again, we talk about this a lot longer and more comprehensively in the workshop. But it has to do with the fact that a kid, particularly, if when they need emotional support, they most always get it, they actually develop in life one way. If it's 50-50, like you may give me emotional support when I need it and you may not, then they actually develop in a different pathway. Or if they become convinced when I have an emotional need, you're not going to fulfill it, you're just not going to be there for me, they actually develop in a different way. Now, in the workshop, we talk about the research about that and how that winds up putting you in one of four quadrants based on a measurement that's done psychologically. And in the workshop, talking about marriage, we talk about, we need you to understand how your previous relationships, particularly in childhood with your parents, affected how you are interacting with your spouses today. So that's what we talk about in the workshop, self-knowledge. But what you gained from that, which makes all the sense in the world, is, oh my goodness, what's that doing to my kids?
What is this doing to my kids? What is what they lived through before I had any of this knowledge? What quadrant are they in? And how can I help them to be more secure and find that secure place with the circumstances that they were dealt?
Okay, which were unfortunate.
Right.
Okay, but secure, that's the key word here. Will you be here for me when I need you? So the first part we talked about, that wall kind of thing, is, can you love me as I am? Which is all kids worry about that. And you said, I begin to realize I'm not letting them be who they are because you were trying to protect them from pain.
Right. And that ultimately that's what every parent, not every parent, but there's typically a parent that's hurting for themselves, they're hurting for their kid, and they tend to do things they think's right.
Yeah, I'm protecting my children when in actuality, without meaning to, you were kind of getting them to wall up against you. Yes. And then the second part of this, like, oh, wait a minute. They have emotional needs. And if I'm not fulfilling those when they need them, it's going to affect the path through which they go for the rest of their lives. But when a person's in their own pain, isn't it kind of hard to be sensitive to the pain of those, or the emotional needs, I should say, of the children that are there?
Yep, it does. In a sense, when we're hurting or when we're angry, think about it. When you're angry, when someone makes you mad or does things to push your buttons, it affects the next person that you're in line with or in contact with.
And it can make you be, if you'll allow me to use this word, and I don't mean to sound accusatory toward you because it's applicable to all of us, but it makes you kind of self-centered.
I was going to use the word selfish.
Okay, go right
but
ahead.
I didn't know because we're human. We all have selfish ways and selfish tendencies, and you just there's so much to think about when with your kids. And honestly, it's so much easier when both parents are on board and have the knowledge. With whatever the outcome is.
Whether they've got a really good marriage or a marriage that's almost in the toilet, or even if a marriage has ended, it becomes important. And so while we were talking about relationships and marriage in that section, you were picking up, wow, this is the way I should deal with my children. And that became a way that actually influenced the way you deal with your children.
It changed the way I parented.
Now, talking about that self-centered stuff, that anger, you mentioned that. That was the third thing you said. That was a parenting essential is, how do I deal with my anger without affecting my kids in bad ways, right?
Yes. And, anger for me was more the lack of what my children were getting.
I see.
You understand what I'm saying?
We're not trying to throw your ex under the bus.
Yeah, no, not at all. But it's, being the primary parent, living through a lot of these things that you just firsthand the primary parent gets, you do tend to get angry at the lack of things that maybe the other parent's not seeing. They're not aware. And going through the workshop just it brings awareness at so many levels.
Okay. Did you get the impression from the workshop we were saying you shouldn't be angry?
No.
We never said that, did
Not
we? You
at
have
all.
a right to be angry.
Right. It's how to handle it, how to manage it, what to do with that anger.
And not just the anger you feel toward your current spouse or your ex-spouse, whatever, but the anger you kind of feel toward life, right? And
You're
sometimes
right.
anger you feel toward your own self. And that can be manifested without even realizing it to your kids, can it?
Yeah, because, we're all in situations at one point in time or another where you're just like, why am I here? How did this happen to me? And I'm mad about it. This is not the way that I wanted my life to go, whether it's about your relationships you're in or marriage or whatever.
And so if you're frustrated with the other parent, the other biological parent, how does that wind up affecting your kids when they become aware of that frustration and or / anger?
It hurts them.
And why does that hurt them?
It hurts them because they don't know what to do with that. They love you just as much as they love the other parent. And when you're angry, it creates, more than likely, it probably creates a brick. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to comfort you and say.
So if I know you're mad at Dad, I'm afraid to tell you that I love Dad.
Yep.
So there goes a brick.
There goes a brick. And I'm gonna, and as parents, when you do split and there are kids involved, there's so much to learn. Like truly your focus really needs to be on the kids.
Yeah, without neglecting you. And I know it's a hard balance to do, but you're right. I mean, these are people that you love. And as we said earlier, nearly every principle we talk about in our workshop is equally applicable to parenting as it is to a relationship like with husband or wife. And so we don't fly into false colors. It's not a parenting workshop. We will have a parenting workshop because Erin's going to kill me if we don't.
That is right.
She's adamant that's going to happen, and I'm afraid of her. So we're going to do that. But right now, if people come to the workshop that is for marriages, it really can be a great parenting workshop if they don't want the marriage to make it, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent.
Absolutely. I'm very passionate about that.
So why did you come to work with us?
I came to work for Marriage Helper because of how much Marriage Helper helped me and changed my life in the way that I parent, and understanding my children, understanding their hurt, understanding their pain, and how to deal with it.
Okay, so you're not saying it didn't help you and Dale, but you're saying the thing that really touches your heart is what happens for the kids.
Yeah, no, it definitely changed the dynamic of my marriage as well. It opened my eyes up to, can we call it baggage? Baggage,
sure.
maybe feelings that I didn't feel like were understood. The communication, like it hindered our communication because I felt like I wasn't being understood, and all he wanted to do was help. And so we came to the workshop. It definitely changed the dynamic of our marriage.
In good ways, I hope.
In absolutely good
Okay,
ways.
good.
We have the best marriage, but ultimately it changed the way that I parented and helped me understand what my children went through and how I can change and be there for them in a different way to hopefully change the outcome of their relationships in the future.
You see, Erin is a client representative. What that means is if you call here and say, tell me what you offer that can help me with the particular situation I'm facing, that's what she does all day long, which can be a pretty frustrating job in and of itself because you hear pain all day long, and we care. And because we care, that hurts. But what I heard you say, and I guess it's still true, is the thing that gets you up and gets you on the phone and all that kind of thing, doing that kind of thing, is because of your heart for the kids.
For the kids, 100%.
Awesome. If you would like to talk to Erin, she's one of our client representatives. We have several. You call our number, 866-903-0990. You can see that on your screen. And if you call and want to talk to this lady because you see her personality, you see her heart, and she's happy to work with you. Of course, we have many others, but if you just call and say, can somebody give me information, you'll wind up with some of our people, and they're all great. They're all great. But if you want to talk to this one, then you ask for her by name. Her name is Erin. Thank you for watching this. Please subscribe below and check out all our other videos here on YouTube about relationships. Until then being the next time we actually talk to you, this is Dr. Joe Beam saying, have a great life.